Welcome back, guys, to the Vitality Code podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jason Fair. I'm here, as always, with my well-groomed, well-bearded, lusciously bearded co-host, Dr. Jeff Farah. And hey, I got to tell you, good morning. I got to tell you, I'm always jealous of your beard. I'm especially jealous today when I woke up.
30-second beard intro.
We have to do a beard. It's like we have to do a beard intro. We have to pay homage to the beard before every show. I'm especially jealous of it and in awe of it on it today. When I walk outside in the morning and it's like 34 degrees, I'm like, whoo, how is that thing in the winter? It's like, it's nice, isn't it?
I mean, it really is very versatile. It actually blocks the sun in the summer. It keeps me warm in the winter. I imagine when I shave this thing when I'm 60, it'll be like a baby face underneath.
Keeps you youthful. Oh
yeah.
My gosh.
Got UV protection.
I love it. Hey, man. So, one of the things that we've been, by the way, is it cold there in Tallahassee? Are you guys getting the same weather?
It's cold for Florida, yeah. I mean, we hit the 30s, I guess it was Thursday morning, Wednesday night, somewhere in that frame. So that's cold for us. We hopped in the plunge. It was great.
Let me ask you that. Now, you said something on one of the recent podcasts, and I can't remember now what it was, but when it's cold outside, getting in the cold, is it different than, clearly it's different, but does it seem to be colder or is it less cold?
I don't know. I think it's all perception. I like it when it's cold outside because you're standing outside in 30-degree weather. You're already cold. What the hell's the difference? Just jump in the water. It's not any different. You know what I mean? So, yeah. But when it's nice and sunny and you're warm and cozy and then you jump in the cold, it's a shock to the system. But I would say most people don't want to jump in the cold when it's already cold out. It's hard to warm back up.
I see. Yeah. Well, that's a good point. Well, hey, but not all of us have that luscious beard either. There's got to be some factor to that point too, I think.
It insulates my face.
It does. It insulates the face. So one of the things we talk a lot about on the show, guys, is, and this is an important distinction. It's huge, actually, and I think for the listening audience in general as well. So if you're in the industry, if you're in healthcare and working as a practitioner, or and if you're not, you're obviously a consumer of healthcare by default because you're a human being. So one of the things that always intrigues us and is always a sticking point, I think, in general, is the connection, Jeff, between the literature and the basic science, if you will, or what comes out in journal articles, what is done in the research lab, and then the applied knowledge of that knowledge, the application rather of that knowledge. And so there's the science, and then there's applied science, and that's in the clinical realm that you and I are find ourselves on a daily basis, trying to understand studies, understand literature, and then apply it, in everyday practice with our patients. And sometimes there's a disconnect there, right?
I think that's the holy grail to some degree, is trying to connect that research side of practice and the practical side of working with human beings, and knowing that knowledge and then applying that is always the toughest, I think.
And one of the big things that I heard early on in my healthcare career and as a physician was this concept, and it's whatever industry you're in, but of silos. Like, we're all kind of in silos, and then, is there any crosstalk? So when I was when you were in training, when I was in training at Wake Forest, it's a big tertiary care center, academic medical center. And we had closer obviously than now, but where every day I was in contact at least with, or could easily access PhDs, researchers, scientists, literally near and in their labs, talk to them about things. But then as you get out into the medical community, away from those centers, and certainly the general public, you lose access to that. And it's tough sometimes to enhance your clinical ability to apply the knowledge because you enter back into that silo. And so the thing that we've been talking about this recently, and what I've really been wanting to do is try to hook up with somebody on the science side of things. And so I thought we'd bring on a guest today so that we could let's do this. Let's have a melding of the minds. Let's kind of explore some things together. And to that end, I want to introduce Dr. Chester Sokolowski. Chester is the CEO of Physique U. Okay. Physique U offers educational courses to help people learn how to transform their body through muscular development and so forth. blending modern science with real world practicality. And that's the thing I love about this. Not just pie in the sky, hard to understand concepts, but actual how to really apply it in your everyday life at the gym or otherwise. He's got a great pedigree. He got his PhD in exercise physiology at FSU. He did postdoctoral work there too, and has done a lot of research and work in different community populations: diabetics, older folks, younger folks, athletes. He did this really cool thing, Jeff. He built an application during his PhD. It's called Physique Lab. It serves as a fitness journal and workout log, and he's got a massive catalog of data that you can access on IG, and we'll ask him about that later. But we asked him to come on the show and talk to us a little bit. One of my things that's near and dear to my heart, and I know it is to yours, Jeff, is this issue of the role of muscular development or the absence of muscular mass and power as we age, and how that affects our vitality as we age, what that does to our health with the rise of the demographic in the United States and actually globally of the older adult, as well as in general, unfortunately, we're getting more poorly conditioned, less conditioned, deconditioned. We're not moving as much as we used to as a whole, and the rise of obesity and diabetes. This all ties in together. And so we thought, let's get somebody who's actually on the front lines of the cutting edge of the science and get his opinions on some of this. And I want to just welcome Chester to the show. Dr. Sokolowski, how are you doing, man?
Great. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for being on the show. So, hey, man, one of the big things is this issue of muscle mass and the role of the myocyte, the muscle cell, in health and disease. If you look at some quick statistics, the oldest or the fastest growing demographic in the U.S. and globally, again, is that over 65 demographic. And even within those that are over 65, you can even break it down further that within itself, that population is actually rapidly growing older and living longer. And so in my role as a trauma surgeon and Jeff's role in community-based practice and multidisciplinary practice, we see these older and older folks that have injuries. They may have fall, hip fractures, the associated morbidity, mortality of that. They have trouble with glucose metabolism, muscular strength, and everything. And I started thinking about this concept of loss of muscle mass. And I know you've done some work with what's termed sarcopenia. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because here's the one question. I'm sorry to ask you that and then interrupt, but the one question is, on this podcast, we look a lot at the vitality of age, of human development and how to maintain that and sustain that. So tell us a little bit about what we can do. I'm in my 40s, Jeff's in his 40s. The people listening to this podcast could be anywhere, in their teens, even to the 20s, 30s. What can we do to not end up in this same situation that we're seeing these folks in? And maybe you can illuminate a little bit about the situation that they're in and the impact it's having on their lives. Can you tell us a little bit about how that develops and what's going on there?
Of course. So sarcopenia, let's define it, is the loss of muscle and strength with advanced age. And that process can start within the 50s or 60s. But we need to understand that before that even starts, the aging process starts. So before you hit sarcopenia, we do see some noticeable physiological changes to the skeletal muscle as well as hormonally. And aging typically starts in the 30s, where you start to lose muscle masses after age 30. Humans are going to lose about 3 to 8% muscle mass per decade after age 30. So the aging process is going to start in your 30s. So beyond getting to sarcopenia or potential functional limitations later in life, we need to be proactive about how we age, starting at a relatively young age, which is age 30. And how we can do that is sort of this multifaceted approach of exercise, nutrition, and balancing your endocrinology. But it's important to everyone to realize that process of, you hit your peak and your bones and your muscle mass strength, that process, I don't like to use the word go downhill because that kind of sounds a little bit somber, but you start to go downhill per se about at age 30. So this is something that all populations can get extremely interested in because it's not going to just suddenly hit you all of a sudden. It's going to be a gradual slower process. But if you're proactive about it, you can delay aging. You can essentially advance your chronological age, increase years without feeling old.
Chester, I had a question. So you kind of mentioned the aging would start, and that is, like you say, you don't use the term going downhill, but it is a little bit, I think, a stark reality that we all need to know about your 30s. I couldn't have told you that stat, but can you help me differentiate what that aging process in the 30s versus that actual definition of sarcopenia that may happen in the 50s? Like, what is that last step that makes you sarcopenic? Is that a official definition that happens? Is that just when that 3 to 8% accumulates to a certain point?
Yeah, so sarcopenia has an official definition with a loss of appendicular muscle mass, in particular of the arms and the legs. But typically, that aging process can be starting to whole body atrophy. And I don't want to say going downhill, but maybe diminishing from your peak. Maybe you peak in your late 20s and you start going downhill from your peak in the 30s. You're not going to be officially sarcopenic by then. You have to hit some specific criteria with standard deviations in the quantity of muscle mass you have in your limbs and your appendicular skeleton.
Gotcha.
Officially sarcopenic. And a lot of sort of a more practical, we talk about blending PubMed and practicality. A more practical approach to sarcopenia is, yes, you're going to have the loss of muscle mass and strength, but also maybe some functional limitations. That's really going to be when the sarcopenic side starts to make more pronounced impacts on your day-to-day living. And obviously, you can have a little bit of atrophy in your 30s or 40s without having any functional limitations or anything like that. But being cognizant, being aware that the aging process is going to start, that's going to help you make the best decisions to set yourself up so you never have to deal with sarcopenia in the first place when you're 50, 60, 70, or 80 years old.
So, Chester, let me ask you, in light of that, a question, because I think this is the concept that I appreciated in talking to you earlier, is like you talked about this concept of optimal versus practical, and that sometimes practical is the most ideal. Is it a practical strategy, since I'm running a gym, since just me personally, is it a practical strategy for somebody to, say, front load their muscular development, trying to, within reason, whatever their overall goals are, but to front load their muscular development prior to this mid-30s age? Is that a practical strategy?
I think being proactive and living a healthy lifestyle is always advantageous. And what you do not want to do is fall behind. Because once you get behind on skeletal muscle, there's sort of this anabolic resistance that accompanies advanced age, where you're going to have potentially, after you eat a high protein meal, you could have different digestion absorption of that dietary protein, which may limit how many amino acids are available to build skeletal muscle. You could have reduced muscle protein synthesis in response to eating. You could have a reduced anabolic response in response to the resistance training. So there is an anabolic resistance that accompanies advanced age. So what you do not want to do is delay and think, oh, I can build muscle later, or I can sort of recover. Maybe if I'm, skipping a little bit here and there, not being proactive about my health in my 30s and 40s, I can just make it up when I'm 50. And, the sarcopenia is more so starts to set in. What you don't want to do is wait. So front loading or accumulating mass while you're younger is a fabulous strategy. And not only are you going to help prevent the loss of muscle mass and the likelihood of getting sarcopenia with advanced age, you're going to have a higher quality of life. Your performance is going to go up. You're going to have more skeletal muscle, which is going to help keep you lean. You're going to have improved body composition. Your health is going to be better. Skeletal muscle is a massive pool, a massive area where glucose can exit the blood and then enter the muscle. So you're going to have better controlled blood sugar. Weight training, resistance training, and Jason, maybe you can touch on this, sets you up for great endothelial transformation and development. So your vasculature, your cardio system is going to be healthier. You can have pronounced benefits by resistance training and also doing endurance training throughout your lifespan, especially in your youth. And that's going to be the best approach rather than waiting. So front loading, if you will, I would certainly say that is a good strategy. But again, all throughout the lifespan. Don't just think, it's in the front.
It's never too late, right? You know what I mean? I have, I think my oldest patient both at the gym, he's approaching his 80th birthday and didn't start working out until he was 79. I want to say this year was his first year ever doing formal workout. Really aged well, but is starting to make gains, so to speak, and doing a very functional approach to life in a very active 79. So it's cool to see, even at that age, And some of that could be neurological adaptations, right? And some of that's learning coordination, and some of that's those things. But definitely developing muscles. Didn't start TRT until he was 78. And then at 79 started working out. So it's kind of cool to see those two combine at a advanced age and actually put it on muscle mass and coordination development.
Yeah, just because you have anabolic resistance and it's harder to build muscle at advanced age doesn't mean you cannot. You can certainly, if you're proactive, if you're eating high protein, we can talk more in the specifics for older populations later, but you can certainly make positive changes, especially if you're coming from a sedentary lifestyle. There's plenty of room to grow.
Yeah, let's talk about some of the specifics. So I think one of the things that interested me about what you just said was the protein consumption. I think we all have this idea of how much protein to eat, but you're telling me that as we age, which makes sense, right? If our absorption of that protein is less, because just the aging process is not only happening to our muscles, but it's happening to our gut, it's happening to other places. And if the absorption of the protein slows down, the formation of the amino acid links and protein development slows down, then if I go back to the beginning, I'm going to need to consume more protein. Is there some sort of algorithm or form, or how much more do I need to eat as I'm personally getting older?
So it's quite interesting. They have sort of a maximum anabolic response to a meal in a younger adult is about 0.24 grams per kilogram, which is about 20 to 25 grams of protein per meal. In some terms.
And I would think that's a kind of a standard that I've always heard.
You get three ounces of chicken, maybe a little bit of side, your mixed meal, some veggies, some carbs, nothing crazy. For an older adult, the maximum sort of similar protein synthetic response occurs at 0.4 grams per kilogram of protein per meal, which is about 35 to 40 grams of protein per meal to get that maximum response. So that is quite a bit. I mean, I'm a 260-pound bodybuilder. That's something that I would do for my skeletal muscle size, but that's something an older adult has to do. Not even, 260-pound bodybuilder, just your normal older adult to get that maximum anabolic response for a meal. So it's certainly an uphill battle for someone with advanced age to get that maximum protein synthetic response. And if you think about, like, if you ever weighed food, 35 or 40 grams of protein, that's a lot of protein. You're looking at 170 grams of protein, something like that. Like that's a hefty meal. And to do that 3-4 times a day.
Yeah. What practical age are you speaking here?
Okay, so there's not a specific definition of advanced age. It can be 70s, it can be 60s. But what some of the deleterious effects start to set in is when you have this higher inflammation. I believe it was NF-kappa B that was elevated, and that can occur in your 50s if you have elevated markers of inflammation. So there's not an official, okay, I'm 60 and now I officially have anabolic resistance, or I'm 70 and I have anabolic resistance. It's the lifestyle you live where you can have inflammation. Maybe if you're a little bit obese, again, it comes back to that body composition, different factors that can set up a pro-inflammatory milieu in your body, and that can occur earlier than 60. So I would say being, again, proactive about your lifestyle and living that healthy life, super, super important. That way you don't get that anabolic resistance where it's not as severe, particularly when you're older. When it comes to diseases, the biggest disease, the elephant in the room, is obesity. If we look at diabetes, there's probably obesity links. If we look at even functional ailments, there could be sarcopenia paired with obesity, differences in insulin resistance. We could have osteoporosis where you have some frail bones. If you pair that with obesity and sort of that sedentary lifestyle, that's going to be a very big detriment. So we have to address obesity first before we tackle all these other diseases. And having a healthy lifestyle, maintaining muscle mass, lifting weights, doing resistance training, that's going to be the key to help combat obesity, because gaining muscle is going to help you defeat obesity in 4 different ways. If you gain a pound of muscle, you're going to burn about 6 more calories a day. Now that doesn't sound like a lot. It's not a crazy boost. If you gain 40 pounds of muscle, you're going to burn about 240 more calories, and that's like 2 bananas or something like that. So you get a small jump in your RMR. It's not great, but hey, a win's a win in terms of keeping you lean. Additionally, your resting metabolic rate, so how many calories you burn at rest. So if you add muscle, if you add metabolically active tissue, you're going to burn a little bit more calories every single day doing nothing. It's not a major increase, but it's a schmecking. And again, a win's a win. We're trying to burn every little
bit. Yeah.
Yeah. You're sleeping. You're burning more calories when you sleep. Additionally, when you do add muscle mass, you're going to get stronger. You're going to lift heavier in the gym. And if you lift 5 pounds, you're going to burn some calories. But if you lift 100 pounds, you're going to burn a lot more calories. So when you have a muscle-focused approach to fat loss, you're going to burn more calories through your RMR, and you're going to lift heavier in the gym. And every time you lift those heavier weights, you're going to burn more calories. Additionally, you're going to carry more muscle outside of the gym. So every time you move your body, you're going to burn more calories. If you walk to get a snack from your refrigerator, you're going to burn more calories. If you get up and go to the bathroom, you're going to burn more calories. So you're going to be sort of more, we call it NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. You're going to increase the number of calories you burn just in your everyday, day-to-day living when you're carrying around a little bit more muscle mass. And that's going to, again, help you shred more fat. And then lastly, the process of building, and people don't realize this because it's kind of nitty gritty with thermodynamics and energy and stuff. The process of building, taking one amino acid and linking it to another and building these really long protein chains, that's a very energy expensive process. To build 1 pound of lean mass, you're going to burn about 5 calories. So 1 gram to build 1 gram of lean mass, you're going to burn about 5 calories. So if you build 1 pound of lean mass, you're going to burn over 2,000 calories just building that 1 pound of lean mass. So when you resistance train,
that's big. Go back, slow down, go back. I need that. I need to write that down too. Tell me that again. So the energy expenditure for building lean tissue.
You link together and build 1 gram of lean mass, you're going to burn about 5 calories. And if there's 454 grams in a pound, then you do the math. That's over 2,000 calories that you're going to burn building 1 pound of lean mass. And so when you resistance train, you're going to increase your capacity to build for maybe 24 or 48 hours. So when you lift weights Monday, you're going to be burning more calories potentially Tuesday and Wednesday to build those protein chains together to help repair your old mass as well as add potential new mass. So you're going to increase the calories you burn from your RMR. You're going to increase the strength you have, which is going to help you burn more calories in the gym. You're going to burn more calories outside of the gym as well when you're carrying more mass, and you're going to burn more calories linking amino acids together and building post-workout during the anabolic window. So building muscle is a fabulous way to stay lean, and it's probably why bodybuilders can eat 5,000-6,000 calories a day and not get 15,000 or 20,000 steps and stay relatively lean. It's because they're always burning calories, just maintaining that muscle mass and moving their larger frame. The fastest way, if you want to burn 100 calories, the fastest way is aerobic activity. Aerobic activity is going to be more energy costly than resistance training. So if you want to burn 100 calories quick, sure, you can go run. But when you're resistance training, you're making an investment. You're building skeletal muscle, and that's going to help you in the long term. Now, I would recommend people do both resistance training and endurance training, but the resistance training is more so a long-term investment to your best body composition. It's going to help you stay leaner over long because you're not just going to burn those calories in the 30-minute run or the 30-minute resistance training session. You're going to stimulate protein synthesis, burn calories after. You're going to add that muscle, carry that muscle mass throughout the day. You're going to gradually lift heavier and heavier and burn more calories every time you're in the gym. So if you have a short-term goal, a week or 2 weeks, maybe jam, your aerobic training. But if you really want this long-term longevity, do both, but especially prioritize resistance training. And women, they need to understand that they're not going to blow up and be all of a sudden too bulky. To get bulky, to be, these 260-pound bodybuilders, or even some of the people you see on social media who are, you wouldn't even assume that, they're a bodybuilder doing, different physique enhancing stuff, but they could be using PEDs. They could be living a lifestyle where all they're doing is shoveling in food. You'd be amazing how common performance enhancing drugs are.
I tell people when they say that to me, I said, how arrogant are you to think that in the next year, you're going to put on so much muscle that this person that you are comparing yourself to has trained their entire life, has eaten for, has agonized over calorie counting, and you think you're going to just accidentally step into this world and do bench press a few times and put on too much, or you're going to squat a few times a week and you're going to, like, the arrogance of people when they say that to me is like, and I get that it's a genuine misunderstanding, so to speak, but like, this is like their full-time job. And I think about, in a real world example, like my 17-year-old daughter, she's trying to put on weight and trying to become a better lifter. And that's one of her passions. It is absolute work for her. Like she can't, it's a hard, like she counts her calories. She has to come in at, wake up sometimes early just so she can get an extra meal in because she's trying to put extra pounds on, so she can lift more. That's a goal of hers. And the hard work I see for somebody at her age, and you can make an argument maybe she's too young to hit that phase, but she's also in a certain degree a chronological peak for adaptations. And the amount of work it takes to put on muscle is staggering. To think you're going to step into a gym and put on excess amounts of work or weight that's going to make you look bulky for a guy or a girl, I think is the ultimate statement of just folly and arrogance, because it's a lot of work to do that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Bodybuilding is a lifestyle. And obviously, we're not saying you're going to become a bodybuilder, but you're going to take steps to live like a bodybuilder. Prioritize resistance training, prioritize sleep, eat a high protein diet, eat maybe 3-4 meals a day. If you can stretch it to 5 or 6, that would be fantastic. You might get some of those beneficial effects on burning visceral fat if you have a little bit more meals with high protein in every single meal. So again, we're not saying become a bodybuilder by any means, but you're going to take some steps to be proactive about maximizing your musculoskeletal system. We talked about women a little bit as well. Muscles pull on bones. Women, they might not want to get bulky, but they certainly want to avoid osteopenia and osteoporosis. Muscles pull on bones. So every time you lift weights, you're going to strengthen your bones and reduce the likelihood that you have osteopenia or osteoporosis. So I would strongly encourage every woman to partake in resistance training, especially older women. Older women.
Yeah. And there's I want to say a young woman because she's in her 60s, and that makes me feel better. But she has an Instagram page, and it's her like a progression of deadlifting. And her son is, to some degree, appears at least to be some sort of lifter, and he's been showing her videos. And she, at 64, put on or deadlifted a personal best, and I forget the weight. I think it was 150-ish kilograms at 64. And I thought, and it was a trap bar, nonetheless, pretty impressive. And I was like, man, way to go! And I think that mindset is changing amongst females, and we're seeing the value of that as we age, and we're seeing the value of adding muscle mass. We're seeing the value of that bone density, because you don't want to hip fracture, right? You want to be independent. You want to be able to walk up the stairs, and the muscle mass is going to be a strong player in those lifestyle choices that come down the road.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my mother personally, as an anecdotal story, she had osteopenia, and she started resistance training and being more cognizant about her diet, about her calcium intake, about her protein intake. And she strengthened her muscles, strengthened her bones, and now is in sort of the top 10% in terms of BMD for her age.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Yeah, I think that's in our world, that's thought of as being impossible. Like, you need a pharmacological agent to do that, and they don't even work that well. So just to hear that, even from an anecdotal standpoint, is amazing that can be reversed.
Yeah, and she started in her late 50s, and now she's in her early 60s. So it's never too late to start. If you're wondering, you talk about anabolic resistance, like, it is not too late. And obviously, we could jump back to the pharmacologicals. If you are in any sort of deficiency, use modern medicine to your advantage. I mean, your margin of error is less when you're older, but again, you could still make progress. And then where you have natural deficiencies, turning to modern medicine to get that advantage, that's going to be in your best bet. Because remember, the three-pronged approach is nutrition, it's exercise, and it's maximizing what you have. But if you cannot maximize what you have, get help from the pharmacological side and use modern medicine to make up with the TRT therapy, with the hormone replacement therapy, and staying healthy on those, potentially statins or blood pressure medication, whatever you need, because it's there to take advantage of. It's there to capitalize on.
I agree. And I tell people sometimes, and I started as a chiropractor, and have lived in the fitness world extensively. And sometimes we badmouth, at least in the chiropractic profession, the pharmacology world. But when it is effective, and it can be really effective, and you can pick and choose. Like, we have such a giant menu of that, right? I always tell my patients on the hormone replacement side, my patients who do the best in your position are the ones who follow through with this regimen that I'm presenting you, but also actively engage in consistent exercise. Those are the people that by far do the best with my treatment. And then I think the reverse, like you're saying, is true. Those people who maybe due to some deficiency or advanced age who are in the gym will do best when they take a targeted approach to the pharmacological approach to medicine as well.
Yeah, I think if you're starting a new program, do not guess. That would be my advice for anyone starting a new program. Surround yourself with people who have the education. When you're talking about your clinic, it's movement and medicine. Like, not just anyone can, anyone can be a personal trainer, but not everyone can give you the best advice to put you in your specific situation in your body in the best position to maximize your results. So I would say, if you're going to jump into a new program, surround yourself with an environment filled with qualified, competent individuals that are going to help put you in the best position to succeed. And then once you start to see those results, you're going to fuel that fire, and it's just going to keep on going.
I agree. I think you need those early wins too. Like you said, it's going to fuel that fire. In light of that, one of the approaches I've taken with my personal trainers is trying to lean into them in education. We might become the most educated staff here in town. And so this information that you just told me about the protein, I want to follow back to that. I think that's good information, good practical information for them, that your older clients are going to need a significantly higher amount of protein to put on muscle. Can you speak to, is there any specific timing that is necessary? Like, I know you told me that anabolic window. Is it important to eat it within a close time frame to your workout? Is it just need to be in that anabolic window? Does it just need to be overall? Like, what does that look like from a practical standpoint?
So if you're starting off, if you're not really tracking food or anything like that, I would say if you can get 4 meals a day with some solid amount of protein, if you're a little bit older, maybe 30, 35 grams of protein per meal, but if you can get 4 meals a day starting off, that's a win. Now, if you've been in the game, you're doing resistance training, you're a little bit more seasoned in the exercise world, then nutrient timing is going to become a much more critical factor. And if that's the case, making sure you get both a pre-workout nutrition and post-workout nutrition. There's actually some data that says the pre-workout nutrition is more important than the post-workout nutrition.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it has a more robust anabolic response when they looked at sort of training fasted and having a post-workout versus having a pre-workout, and they sort of measured protein synthesis in a specific time window. So the pre-workout nutrition, do not ignore that. If you kind of wake up really early and don't have time, there was just a great paper published by the ISSN, International Society of Sports Nutrition, on essential amino acids. You can take some essential amino acids, get a little protein synthetic response, then go to the gym, and then have a post-workout meal. But I would certainly prioritize both pre and post. Again, if you train really early, doing a quick little essential amino acid supplementation and a quick little shake, a little drink, that can be very good. But don't ignore the peri-workout window, both pre and post nutrition. And if you are striving to maximize your adaptation, remember, recovery is dependent on nutrients. So depriving yourself of nutrients or not eating post-workout, that's not going to be advantageous, because you need those resources to recover. You need those amino acids. You need the energy to link those amino acids together. So prioritizing post-workout nutrition, the more seasoned you are, the longer you've been in resistance training, it gets more and more important to keep seeing positive adaptations.
Yeah, so someone like me, so I wake up about 5. If I beat my alarm, like 4:45, I have a cup of coffee, and then I go to the gym and I work out. So what I'm hearing you say is that maybe from an anabolic standpoint, at least, maybe not the best strategy. Like, what is that pre-workout meal? Because while I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to win some competition. I'm trying to be on stage. I am trying to win at the game of life through these adaptations. So it is still important for me. And if there's a small tweak that I can do over the next 30, 40 years, that small little tweak will add up. So is that maybe not necessarily deleterious, but is there a more advantageous way to approach a pre-workout meal? Like, is there specific nutrients I should or should not be eating?
Yeah. Well, if for your situation personally, if you're waking up at 5 a.m. and you don't want to wait a long time to digest, then I would recommend essential amino acids. It's just a liquid
I can't work out on a full stomach. I just can't. Yeah. It just does not work for me. So I just go on an empty stomach. And I generally don't really eat breakfast so I work out at 6, and then I probably eat breakfast around 8. So from 5 to 8 in that window, I'm not doing anything.
I would say that if you are pressed for time, then have some essential amino acids. Those are going to be your building blocks, because muscles are doing two things. They're either building or they're breaking down. There's no maintenance phase. There's no doing nothing. Cells are always doing something. Cells are proactive. So if you're not building, if you don't have a signal that tells them to build, the cells are going to be breaking down. Therefore, getting sort of the anabolic stimuli from the essential amino acids could be advantageous if you have to go wake up super early, then rush to the gym. And that happens. A lot of people do that. They don't have time to digest or anything. But if you do have time to digest, then I would say focus on a protein source with all the amino acids. So animal protein would be great. Or if you're a vegetarian or vegan, pairing different plant protein sources so you can get a complete amino acid profile, as well as carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are going to be, barring you don't have insulin resistance, fabulous to help change your body. So you're going to be able to train more intense, lift heavier, longer. You're going to have less protein breakdown when you're training if you're going in fed as opposed to depleted muscle glycogen. So I would say in the peri-workout window around your workout, if you do not have any sort of insulin resistance, I would focus on lean protein and then carbohydrates.
Can you speak to, and I don't know if there's any information out there, is there any difference between, like you mentioned, if you're, animal sources, if you're a vegetarian, is there any difference or is there any adaptations or preferential to actual food sources, say, versus a protein shake? Is that information out there, or are they just as good for somebody to take?
They're pretty much just as good as long as you're having all the essential amino acids. There could be some reductions in protein breakdown. So when you're changing your body, you have protein synthesis and protein breakdown. And again, they're always going on. It's kind of this nonstop tug of war. But if you have more energy from carbohydrates or fat, you're going to reduce your whole body protein breakdown because the body says, hey, we have energy, we have resources available. We don't need to break down our existing resources. We don't need to break down our muscle and convert those amino acids into molecules that we can use for fuel because fuel is readily available. Therefore,
so maybe speaking more to like a keto, right? So you're not just eating strictly just protein, right? So you're saying like a practical standpoint would be eating enough protein, but then also having that carbohydrate source to keep your body fueled.
Yeah, energy is super important. Now, again, if somebody wakes up super early and they don't want to digest anything, because the more energy you have, the longer digestion is going to take. But if you have time to digest, have a little bit of a diverse meal. If there's no insulin resistance, protein and carbohydrates, if there is some sort of insulin resistance, or if you just prefer a keto diet, protein and then some fats. And then obviously even the keto diets, they have vegetables, they have fruits. I think timing those fruits around your workout would be fabulous to top off that liver glycogen. Make sure your body's in a good position to push outside of a comfort zone. Give yourself the resources to push outside of your comfort zone. But definitely just overall prioritizing. We talk about, what's the most important meal today? Is it breakfast? Well, I think it's not breakfast. I think it's the peri-workout nutrition, particularly the pre-workout and then the post-workout.
So whenever that workout is, would determine potentially what that most important meal is for you.
Yes. Oh yeah. I kind of plan my whole day around my workout.
So speaking of, we talked a little bit about this nutrition, and there's one last concept I wanted to touch on before I let you go is like training volumes. I'll give a quick little anecdotal segue. So, my gym, we do personal training. We do CrossFit in terms of the classes available, and that CrossFit has a multimodal approach to it. But I personally do the CrossFit, but I also do some other stuff. So I can only get there so many days per week. And we do strength cycles, right? So over the past couple of weeks, I've been hitting maybe 2-ish days a week at the CrossFit gym, but they've happened to fall on strictly the weightlifting days, right? So we've been doing a front squat cycle. And so nobody sees me, because I'm only, so to speak, because I'm not there 5 days a week. So I was doing about 2 days a week, but I had a lifetime PR in my front squat. And I was like, this is interesting because, in my brain, I there is this tilt for me towards this overworking, like we just keep working, just shut up and work. But this was a much lower volume of working for me. And I still put on significant amounts of muscular development as to some degree evidenced by a PR. So could you speak to maybe some training volume ideas? Like, are we overtraining? Are we undertraining? What's the most common that you see, or how do I evaluate that?
So you can change your body. You can change the physiological signaling in your muscle cells with just one set. So doing some is better than none. And you don't need a lot to have a medium response. You
Right.
can change your body a little bit more with 3 sets as opposed to 1 set. And then there's also a cap. So we talk about cell signaling. So after you do resistance training, you're going to increase protein synthesis. So it's going to increase, and this is your capacity to build. Your capacity to build, to link amino acids together, is going to increase after you work out. Then it's gradually going to go back down. When it goes back down, it could be 24 hours or 48 hours. It's a little bit varying in the literature, and it's going to depend on how much volume you do. So if you do just a little bit, you can see an increase in protein synthesis, and then it might go back down in 24 hours, and you're going to have building near resting levels. But if you do a little bit more, you could increase protein synthesis, and it can go and stay up, and maybe it starts to drop maybe 48 hours after. Now, if you do 200 sets, you're still going to have this increase of protein synthesis, and it could go back down still within about 2 days, according to most of the literature. So we see this plateau effect in terms of volume, where doing more is not necessarily better to get a more anabolic response. Unfortunately, if you do more, you're still going to experience muscle damage. You're still having those muscle contractions, generating the force, putting that wear and tear on your body. So some people, if they're doing a robust amount of sets, they might be overtraining, and they might be better off doing less. And other individuals, particularly if they're leaving a lot of reps in reserve, not going near failure, then they might need a little bit more sets. So I can't determine if someone's overtraining or undertraining, but just if you're counting the quality of your sets and you're training near failure every single set, near true muscular failure, you probably need fewer sets than what's pronounced in the literature and pronounced on social media. You see these workouts of 4 times 20 and 3 times 15, 3 sets times 15 reps and 4 sets times 20 reps. Some of those might be overdoing it if the person is, taking these sets near failure. If someone's doing 4 times 20 and 4 times 15, they're not taking those sets near failure. And I believe they're not sufficiently warmed up for those sets. But if someone's truly pushing themselves near true muscular failure every single set, you can make great progress on just 1, 2, maybe 3 or 4 sets and see those robust responses. And you mentioned strength progress. Strength is the best way. If your strength is consistently increasing, that's the best way to judge hypertrophy. And that's the best way to judge muscle damage. So if your strength is consistently getting better, your muscle damage is lower, you're building myofibrillar proteins. Those are the proteins in your skeletal muscle that are going to allow you to generate force. And that would be a great way to assess your progress. So if you have a strength plateau, you might be overdoing it, and you might be better off cutting back. So having just 2, workout days where you're doing some front squats, that might be better than training, 4 or 5 times a week if your goal is to increase hypertrophy.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept. You said if you're having a strength plateau, maybe you need to pull back because you're leaning too much to that catabolic side then, as a potential, as opposed to the anabolic side of things.
Yeah. A lot of people, if you're going into a workout, so let me just set the standard. If you work out, you should grow. You should have a super compensation. You should be better than before. So if you train, the next time you train, you should be stronger. But if you train and the next time you train, you're weaker, then that tells me you're not recovered. And not recovered, that's a similar word to overtrained. So if you're under recovered or overtrained, then you're not going to see that increase in strength. You're not going to see that super compensation effect. So that's a great way to indicate if your strength is going nowhere, then you might be doing too much work.
Yeah, you said under recovered. I think that's a good way to look at it because you can manipulate the side of that equation via the recovery side, right? So you could maximize or optimize, if we want to use that cliche word, to optimize your recovery, which would then, if you're not doing the things that lend itself to recovery, then that overtraining would become more likely to happen. And so I think the recovery side is something that we've tried to push at our gym specifically, just always keeping people in mind that is part and parcel of your working out. So half of our gym is a workout half, so to speak, and the other half of our gym is a recovery half, right? So we have tools on both sides that lend themselves to both of those adaptation processes.
Yeah, it's super important to realize that you change your body outside of the gym. You apply the stimulus to change your body in the gym, but the actual transformation and the growth occur outside of the gym. So what you do outside of the gym is equally as important as what you do inside of the gym.
Yeah, that's a tough one, I think, too, as I personally have experienced as I've gotten older. That side of the equation has become, unfortunately, significantly much more important for me. My nutrition, the gaps in my nutrition have become quite obvious as I have gotten older, I've not been able to, my genetics and my age and my whatever is, conferred to me by being a young man, I am losing that. And I see it less on my performance side, but I see it significantly on the nutrition and recovery side. But so, yeah, I think we're pushing close to an hour here, Chester. I really appreciate your time.
Jeff, what do you do to combat that? Or what would you do now any differently from what you learned?
I bitch and moan a lot. That's my number one technique. I think the thing that I've had to come to really realize significantly is nutrition. If there was a weakness and a hole in my game, it is my nutrition. And I really noticed it at about 44, and significantly now that I'm in the second half of 45, I am no longer afforded the ability to eat like crap. I can't. It's just, and I think what I would tell a younger population is if I could have done that then, oh my God, it would have been amazing. And those habits are really hard and difficult to learn and get yourself to stick to. Sure. So if I would have gotten better, not only would I have been better in my 20s and banked a little bit more, but I also would have had those habits grooved a little bit better. And so nutrition is probably the number one thing that I think has been the most difficult for me.
So it turns out you can't come home after football practice and have a half-gallon ice cream on the. Yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You can't eat
Guthrie's and ice cream as a post-workout. Yeah. That's not my peri-workout window, Chester. That's not an ideal workout nutrition.
Man. Well, you are carb sensitive during that time, and boy, geez, but it doesn't mean to do that. No, that's yeah. I agree. That's been my thing too, and those habits are hard to break.
Really hard. Chester, I think I'd like to follow up in another conversation about the specifics as I thought about this conversation. This is a lot of good information, like I said, for my personal trainers that are working at our clinic, and things like training intensity, training volume, some of the concepts of actual specific training adaptations, sets and reps, and that peri-nutrition. And I want to take that dive a little bit further. So if you have the time and are willing, I'd love to have you guys or have you come back on our show.
Sure, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Chester, just real quick. If people want to get in touch with you outside the podcast, if they want to look at the good work you're doing and learn more about what you're doing with Physique U, as well as your app and kind of your social media stuff that you're doing, where can they find you?
I think all the information for me would be at Dr. Soko, Dr_SOKO at Instagram. That would be the best place to look.
Okay, my man. We're gonna get you back on the podcast again if you're okay with that. Producer Nick, let's slate him in. Jeff, I think that's a great idea, man. Hey, Chester, I just want to echo what Jeff said. I really enjoyed the time. Learned a ton today. Hope you guys did at home. There's a ton. This guy's he's a walking encyclopedia with big muscles. I love it. This guy knows a ton, and we are the better for it. And I appreciate
next
your
podcast.
Time,
we're all gonna do it with our shirts off in the gym. We're gonna...
I don't know. I'm rocking the dad bod. Maybe you.
I am too. No, I'm not doing it. Hell no.
All right, my man. Thanks a lot, Chester. We'll see you later.
All right, guys.
Thank you.